Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
There was the time he got mad about the size of his rally, not the reported size of his rally, but the size of his rally. There was the time he told the Attorney General that he was an idiot. There was the time he cursed out the Senate Majority Leader over the phone, the berating with a profane shouting match reporting. There was the time he erupted at Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. That one happened on live TV and gave rise to some amazing photos. It is a feature, a regular feature of this presidency that the president gets so mad. It is such a thing that the president literally has had to say, quote, "I don't have temper tantrums." He said that in the middle of a big public rant about his border wall, which kind of seemed like a tantrum, even in that moment. Here's another one, though. In December 2017, there were multiple reports that the president's biggest lender, Deutsche Bank, had received a subpoena from Robert Mueller in the Russia investigation. Deutsche Bank, of course, has loaned President Trump billions of dollars over the years when other financial institutions wouldn't loan him so much as their pocket lint. Why have they done that? I mean, the bank was also involved in a multi-billion-dollar Russian money laundering scheme. Are those things connected? It was not a total surprise that Robert Mueller might want to peek inside the Trump files at Deutsche Bank. Nevertheless, months later, we learned that those published reports that Deutsche Bank had received subpoenas from Mueller's investigation, we learned that those reports sent President Trump into one of his more over-the-top, destructive, impressive freakouts. The president was reportedly so hopping mad over the nerve of Robert Mueller to subpoena Deutsche Bank that he reacted to that news by trying to fire special counsel Robert Mueller. That was the reporting. Quote, angry president sought to fire Mueller over Deutsche Bank subpoenas. Now, weirdly, at the time, it was not totally clear that Mueller actually had subpoenaed Deutsche Bank. The president's personal lawyer said he checked it out with the bank and found that no such subpoenas existed. Okay, we don't know. Sort of an open question given the reporting. Maybe that was right. I mean, maybe it was a false alarm for the president. The House Intelligence Chairman, Adam Schiff, has repeatedly publicly questioned whether the special counsel's investigation ever peeked into the president's finances at all, suggesting, in fact, that they haven't. I don't know why Adam Schiff is saying that, but he's been saying that for months. He's probably in a position to know as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. I mean, we also don't know for sure what happened to the subpoenas that Deutsche Bank reportedly got that made the president so mad. Did they definitely get them? What happened to them once they were issued? Why did the president react the way he did? I mean, maybe we'll find out on Thursday when the Attorney General releases some redacted version of Robert Mueller's report. But 2 days before that report comes out, we do know, as of today, that Deutsche Bank definitely has been subpoenaed now. For sure. Late yesterday, Democrats in the House issued friendly but formal subpoenas to Deutsche Bank, demanding the president's financial records, exactly the same territory of those reported subpoenas that drove the president to rage out and try to fire Robert Mueller a long time ago. The New York Times is reporting that Democrats have not just subpoenaed Deutsche Bank, they've also asked for documents from J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and also Citigroup, documents regarding, quote, possible money laundering by people in Russia and Eastern Europe. These new subpoenas from Democrats in Congress follow one for financial records that were sent to the president's accounting firm, and the House Ways and Means Committee directing the IRS to hand over the president's tax returns in accordance with the law, which says the IRS has to hand them over. The president has now hired a brand new phalanx of lawyers whose only job seems to be to keep the president's tax returns and financial records away from scrutiny, to keep them secret from everybody who has a right to see them. The president's business, the Trump Organization, is also reportedly considering ways to try to block Deutsche Bank from complying with the subpoenas and forking over Trump's files. So, the president's bank, the president's accounting firm, the president's taxes, it's all happening at once. I know the Mueller report Thursday morning, but all of this stuff separate and apart from Mueller's investigation, it's all now happening. Congress wants all of those records now and is acting to get them. The last time we got anywhere close to this, the president got so mad he tried to fire Robert Mueller. With no Robert Mueller left to fire anymore, what is the president going to do to stop this now? Hold that thought.
It is Thursday, the 18th of April of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. What a dish to be serving on the day of the Barr Report. Yes, it's not the Mueller Report, it's the Barr Redacted Report. And I confess I had to put myself in a bubble. I was not able to watch the beginning of the Barr Report. I have it on in the background, but, had to concentrate on the matters at hand, and these are the stories that we've curated for you today here in the Bistro Cafe and the Chef's Table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. So I can't really speak about what Barr put forth today or any of the questions that he may have been asked by the gaggle there. But I'm sure that David was able to keep track and fill in a little bit as it started about a half hour after his show started. So you've gotten a little bit there. And then, of course, Tom Hartman's going to get us all up to speed as well. But we've got a lot of news today. We had a lot of news overnight as well, not just the impending Barr Report, which does beg a lot of questions. Where's Mueller? Well, Mueller has been, has he been subpoenaed yet? I know that Schumer and Pelosi have gotten together and have requested, is that the term? Well, as soon as I got up this morning, they put that forth, and we'll look forward to that. The Australian ambassador has come forward and willing. I believe what he's actually going to do is put the lie to the lie that Papadopoulos was the impetus to start this investigation when Papadopoulos popped off to the Australian ambassador, and the Australian ambassador considered it so untoward that he got a hold of our intelligence community. The DOJ looks like, elements of the DOJ, and we know who that is. Yeah, that's Bill Barr. Bill Barr They want to go after Christopher Steele of the Steele dossier. Of course, it wasn't a dossier. It was a working project, a working paper, and they want to go after him for I don't know what reason. I just don't know what's the reason. He wrote a paper. He discovered some really bad stuff, and he turned it over to the appropriate authorities. What's the problem? The problem is Donald J. Trump is a mobster and maybe even a traitor. He threw that term around rather flippantly the other day, calling Democrats and anybody investigating them treasonous. Yet, a hostile foreign power did help him gain the presidency, and he has denied it every step of the way. We even have pictures from him, albeit from Russian media, because they were allowed into the Oval Office. We have the tapes of him handing over secrets to Kislyak and Lavrov right there in the Oval Office. So I guess that's not a crime. Yeah, we better start talking to Mueller, and in open session, by the way. All right, well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, that was at the top there. Congress is flouting Trump's red line and subpoenas his financial records. He said, if anybody goes after my financials, that's crossing a red line. Well, of course it is, because that's where your crimes lay. Or does it lie? On the rest of the menu, GOP Congressman Dan Crenshaw of Texas smeared a 9/11 firefighter who dared to criticize him, because that's the kind of guy Dan Crenshaw is. GOP Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin wants to change the law to jail immigrant kids even longer in icebox baby gulags. There's big money in that now. And it's a growth industry. And attorneys general in Michigan and New Mexico pledged to not prosecute women or providers if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Well, there may be some sanctuary states then, won't there? After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where the House Oversight Committee wants White House aide Stephen Miller to testify on family separation and other anti-immigrant policies. Yeah, haul his ass up before Congress. It's about time. And Yale scientists restoring basic cellular activity in pigs' brains hours after their deaths is not as porcine Frankenstein-ish as it sounds. It's not. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the contribute button. And do become a recurring Patreon to Netroots Radio. Your recurring contribution helps us save money for new equipment that we do need to buy. The machines are wearing out. After 8 years, we are celebrating 8 years this year, our 8th anniversary of continuous broadcasting resistance. That's right. 24/7, 365. And your generosity has kept us doing that resisting all this time. And thank you very much. Bills have been going up, and we need to buy the new machines. And thank you for becoming a recurring contributor to Netroots Radio. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. I take care of at Justice Putnam on Twitter. It's on Twitter. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get the links onto social media in that tiny little window. It's not so tiny, but it's small enough. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, iHeart, and wherever podcasts can be found. All of them. They're all out there. Okay, let's take a look at this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Probably what I should be saying about the Mueller report is that we're not going to report on it until we get to see the whole Mueller report. All right? I'm not going to talk about Barr. We'll talk about him tomorrow. But today, we are in the bubble, and we're going to look at some articles that probably slipped by the wayside because of all the air being sucked out of the room. Oliver Willis of Share Blue Media brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Oh, I should mention a little bit of jambalaya. A little bit of spice in your life. Representative Dan Crenshaw, Repug of Texas, attacked a firefighter who survived 9/11 after the firefighter had to call him out for dismissing survivors of 9/11. Yeah, he's so busy going after Omar because, she didn't show the proper fealty to 9/11. Well, Crenshaw accused Fire Department New York firefighter Rob Serra of conspiring against him, whining to the New York Daily News that Serra has engaged in a, quote, nefarious attempt to undermine him, end quote. Wow, nefarious. The meltdown from Crenshaw, a freshman Repug congressman. Oh, the honorifics that I mention here come solely from this reporter and in his opinion. Indeed. Well, look, Crenshaw is a Repug, just by definition. Well, the meltdown came after Serra revealed that Crenshaw had brushed him off while he and other 9/11 survivors were on Capitol Hill lobbying for benefits. Serra said Crenshaw told him he was too busy to speak to the group. Serra's account was backed up by retired New York Police Department Sergeant and 9/11 survivor Tom Wilson, who told the Daily News, "We got brushed off by Crenshaw." The revelations about Crenshaw come as he has taken part in a smear campaign against Representative Ilhan Omar that took comments she made out of the 9/11 attack and twisted them to make her look like she was slamming victims of the attack. Ironically, Omar is a co-sponsor of the 9/11 bill, while Crenshaw is not, because the whole of the Repug Party are gaslighting fanatics. And it didn't just start with this administration. The campaign against Omar, now led by Trump, has resulted in death threats against her. Speaker Nancy Pelosi has been in communication with Capitol Hill police to secure the Congresswoman and her staff. Crenshaw tried to use 9/11, the worst terrorist attack in American history, as part of a bigoted attack on Omar that caused his indifference to 9/11 victims to come to light. Now he is whining that his unsavory behavior and his unsavory remarks are receiving attention. But Crenshaw created this entire situation for himself, and no amount of complaining can undo his own actions. Well, I had to check in, and I did a little bit earlier, and I will just say that it looks like the bar spectacle is really his letter, that 4-page letter, but the extended dance mix. Yeah, I think that's what's going on there. Let's get to our next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it comes our way by Share Blue Media as well. And, yes, it is Emily Singer who brings us this offering. Despite global condemnation for his cruel family separation policy, Trump still thinks his administration is not being cruel enough to immigrants and asylum seekers. And one Republican senator is ready to help Trump reach his especially cruel goal of jailing immigrant children for longer than the law currently allows. Because who cares about the law when you're a crook and a mobster? Maybe even a treasonous one at that. Senator Ron Johnson, Repug of Wisconsin, plans to introduce legislation that would let the Trump administration detain children for up to 90 days, far more than the current limit of 20 days. Indeed. Johnson wants to amend the 1997 Flores settlement, which allows children to remain in immigration detention for no more than 20 days. Just a reminder, the Flores settlement took a long time to get settled. A long time. Johnson said that allowing the Trump administration to detain kids for longer would make it easier for families with children to be deported. They've come here for asylum and we want to get rid of them. Because Stephen Miller is a white nationalist, and so is Trump, and I don't care what anyone thinks. The whole of the GOP party is teetering on the edge of white nationalism if they haven't already fallen full face into it. Allowing the Trump administration to keep kids in detention facilities is as cruel as it gets, but Johnson tried hard to make himself sound reasonable. I'm happy to compromise at 60, Johnson said, referencing the number of days he thinks is reasonable to lock up babies and young children in icebox baby gulags. No longer than 20 is the law. One of the reasons Johnson is okay with jailing kids for longer, apparently, is that he thinks the cages immigrants are kept in are not as bad as people have made them out to be. It doesn't look like these people have been abused or spent 3 nights in a tractor trailer. Yeah, icebox baby gulags. That's what they are. Johnson's remarks are especially callous given that multiple immigrant children have died in U.S. custody in recent months. And when a group of Democratic lawmakers recently visited a tent city where migrants were being held, they witnessed shockingly unhealthy conditions. Sickest of all, Johnson is tentatively naming the bill that would allow the government to jail kids the Families Act. You know, you just can't make this shit up. We'll have much more to say about Barr's performance tomorrow. We're making a concerted effort not to pay attention to what went on earlier or report on it. And so I'm staying true since there's so much other news out there that we can attend to. And I'll be more interested when Mueller appears before Congress. And I would hope that some of those investigators get hauled up there, too, because I think we need to find out what the hell is going on. All right. This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life, is Out of Think Progress by Amanda Michelle Gomez. Attorneys general in Michigan and New Mexico are pledging not to prosecute pregnant people or providers should Roe v. Wade be overturned. Both states would criminalize abortion in the event that the Supreme Court landmark decision is overturned, making these statements all the more powerful. I will never prosecute a woman or her doctor for making the difficult decision to terminate a pregnancy, said Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, a Democrat, at a press conference on Tuesday. Following her announcement, New Mexico Attorney General Hector Balderas, another Democrat, told Think Progress he also would commit to not prosecuting abortion-related cases. every New Mexico woman should have the ability under the law to seek the best medical care and family planning services for themselves, Balderas said in a statement. I will always stand with New Mexican women who would never or should never be criminalized for seeking access to their own reproductive rights. Both Michigan and New Mexico have laws predating Roe that criminalize abortion. In Michigan, thanks to a 1931 law, a doctor could be found guilty of a felony for performing an abortion, unless it's to save the pregnant person's life. New Mexico also has a decades-old law that would make it a felony to administer an abortion except in narrow circumstances if Roe is overturned. The authority of the Attorney General widely varies from state to state. In Michigan, for example, the Office of the Attorney General can intervene in a criminal case, which could include abortion-related cases in a post-Roe world. In New Mexico, the Office of the Attorney General does have jurisdiction to enforce the abortion law, although they also have discretion to decide whether to enforce, said Miriam Aranjani, an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico School of Law. That statement means something, she said, of Balderas' pledge. But at a minimum, in every state, the Attorney General sets the tone as the top law enforcement officer, sort of like how Barr is the top law enforcement officer here, and he's in collusion with Trump. I guess that makes him a bad cop. How it's going to be interpreted, or the influence it has, and whether it leads district attorneys in the direction of the Attorney General's opinion, now we're speaking about the abortion issue here, of course, depends on the relationship and politics and culture of those offices, said Jill Adams, founder and chief strategist of the SIA legal team, a reproductive justice organization that specializes in the criminalization of abortion. We hope other attorneys general follow AG Nessel's lead and declare they will not abuse the powers of their office by criminalizing people who have abortions. Think Progress reached out to the attorneys general living in the 14 states where abortion bans could be enforced if Roe is overturned, and only 2 offices other than New Mexico responded. Neither would commit to following Nessel's lead, pointing to a difference in state laws. Under the Arkansas Constitution, the Attorney General does not have any authority to prosecute cases. That duty is left to the elected prosecutors of the state. And that was Communications Officer Amanda Priest of Arkansas. Nevertheless, Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, a Republican, strongly believes that Roe and Casey were wrongly decided and stands for protecting the lives of the unborn. Angel babies have much more rights than those being held in icebox baby gulags. In North Dakota, it's the county state's attorney, not the Attorney General, who has jurisdiction or authority over prosecution of criminal offenses, and there are 53 counties. Wow. The county state's attorney does not fall under the supervision or authority of this office and does not answer to us, said Public Information Officer Liz Brocker. Even if a current sitting prosecutor says they won't pursue the case, the next one might. In Michigan, for example, the statute of limitations is between 6 and 10 years. With so many anti-abortion cases before the Supreme Court, which now leans conservative, there is a real possibility that Roe could be overturned. Abortion is a matter of health care, not a criminal act. In states across the country, outdated and dangerous laws remain on the books, and that would turn women or providers into criminals, Andrea Miller, president of the National Institute for Reproductive Health, said in a statement. We need to repeal these laws, and in the meantime, we need more attorneys general following the lead of AG Nessel in ensuring that no one goes to jail for seeking or providing an abortion. Indeed. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back from that break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, I only have 2 minutes to tell you why. I know that Robin Bissell, European-American director of The Best of Enemies, wants this movie to be a reconciliation film. It's the true story of black activist Ann Atwater in early 1970s Durham, North Carolina, becoming friends with C.P. Ellis, the Durham Ku Klux Klan head. And I know Bissell wants so desperately to use this story to speak to today's racial divides that have risen like a sleeping giant. I know, but I only have 2 minutes to tell you why. I know we expect it's a story about both of them, but the movie prioritizes the perspective and thus the struggles of Ellis over Atwater. I know the first quarter of the movie bounces back and forth, Ellis and Atwater in parallel scenes, but all of Ellis' scenes feel longer and seek to humanize him. Not so with Atwater. We learn Ellis cares about his community and his family. We learn that Atwater is mean, tough, and angry. I mean, I could go scene by scene, but I only have 2 minutes to tell you why. So the first half of the movie invites us to counter our assumptions about Ellis, but swerves dangerously close to making Atwater the stereotype of the angry black woman. And since the first half of the movie doesn't go into detail about what the Klan specifically believes and how their handshake collusion with local white businesses and local white government has disenfranchised Durham's black community for generations, we have no emotional connection as to why Atwater and her people are so angry, and thus no basis for empathy with her. To make it worse, scene after scene with Ellis invites us into his inner world. We see him pause and think and consider. We see Atwater lash out and react. It's not until halfway through the movie that we get a moment of Atwater's self-reflection, and a camera pan reveals Ellis watching her, turning it into yet another moment on his journey. And that was the last straw. That's why I walked out. I know. I'm sorry. I'm going off on a movie I only saw a little more than half of. So go, see it, tell me I'm wrong, catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube. This has been Take Two Movie Review, and I'm sorry. I just couldn't take it.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
It's the truth for all of our senses that they are there to convert physical energy in the surrounding world into electrical responses, which are the common currency that the nervous system uses.
Rockefeller University neuroscientist James Hudspeth.
So our eyes and the photoreceptors there have to convert light into electricity. Our ears similarly have to convert mechanical vibrations in the air into electrical responses. And the way this is done is there are so-called hair cells. These cells have little microscopic bristles, about 100 of them, and on the top of each cell, these bristles vibrate back and forth in response to sound. That sets up an electrical signal that then goes down a nerve fiber and into the brain.
Hudspeth, the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Robert Fettiplace, and the Pasteur Institute's Christine Petit shared the 2018 Kavli Prize in Neuroscience for their work on the molecular and neural mechanisms of hearing. Hudspeth and Fettiplace both spoke April 9th at the National Academy of Sciences in Washington, D.C., at an event honoring 10 U.S. Nobel and Kavli Prize laureates. The evening was sponsored by the Kavli Prize and produced by Scientific American. More from Hudspeth.
And the real question then is, what happens with these hair cells? As they degenerate, we lose them owing to loud sounds, we lose them owing to certain legitimate drugs, we lose them just with aging. And what can be done to repair them so that we can restore hearing?
Robert Fettiplace.
Well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. I mean, one is that, in fact, you could try and regrow them. Almost all hearing loss is due to death of the hair cells or lack of formation of them in the first place. The cells along the cochlea are all different, and you've not got to just generate a generic hair cell. You've actually got to generate one that's specific for each place. It has the specific properties which differ along the organ and will connect up to the nerve fibers.
The problems that Robert has mentioned pertain to mammals, including ourselves. And the situation is very different with other four-legged animals, tetrapods. So in amphibians, in reptiles, including birds, this regeneration is going on all the time. Same in fish. And in fact, you can take a chicken to, a Motley Crue concert or whatever, blast its ears, and they will quite nicely regenerate, even with frequency-specific hair cells. They will reconnect, and the animal will be able to hear normally again. I agree that there is an enormous challenge, and this is certainly something that won't happen overnight in ourselves. But I don't think it's a hopeless task, and I think basically what many people are trying to do is to decode the signals that are sent as these hair cells develop, and by doing so to recognize the signaling pathways that might be reactivated to recapitulate the original development and restore hair cells by that means.
Just don't take your chicken to a Marilyn Manson concert. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
No more immigrants, no more refugees. The country is full, says Donald Trump. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. But not according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which has announced that the country needs more immigrant workers and wants to issue more H-2B visas for temporary jobs in the United States. For immigrants, jobs in housekeeping and landscaping in restaurants, hotels, and amusement parks, including workers from Mexico and Guatemala, as well as Jamaica and South Africa.
Some of us are illegal, and some are not wanted. Our work contracts out, and we have to move.
As a senior immigration analyst at the Cato Institute said, on one hand, we need more people because the country's economy is booming, and on the other hand, we say the country is full, go back. It's impossible to reconcile those positions. There is, of course, a larger point here beyond the issue of worker visas. And that is that immigrants are not the enemy of the country, as Trump insists, but rather the lifeblood of our nation and our democracy.
Adios, mis amigos, Jesus Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane, and all they will call you will be deportee.
This ACLU Minute is inspired by the enduring words of the songwriter Woody Guthrie, and the voices of Arlo and Emmylou Harris.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. You have more than likely heard of Rosa Parks and how she heroically sat down on a bus to help end segregation in Montgomery, Alabama. But did you know discrimination often barred black bus drivers, even in northern cities? On this day in labor history, the year was 1941, and New York City bus companies took an important step in fighting discrimination on the job. The bus companies agreed to hire 200 black bus drivers and mechanics. Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. had led a 4-week boycott of the bus companies. The bus boycott was not Powell's first battle for hiring equality in the city. In 1938, the Reverend Powell Jr. had followed in his father's footsteps to become the pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. The charismatic pastor used his status to call for civil rights reforms. He helped lead Don't Buy Where You Can't Work campaigns in an effort to open up quality employment opportunities for black New Yorkers. Similar campaigns took place in other northern cities, including Cleveland and Chicago. Perhaps Reverend Powell's campaign that garnered the most attention came in 1939, where he led a picket to the Empire State Building to protest discriminatory hiring practices at the World's Fair. The eyes of the globe were on New York City due to the fair, and the Reverend understood it was an excellent opportunity to publicly make the case to end employment discrimination. His strategy was successful. The number of black employees employees for the fair more than tripled. 2 years later, the bus boycott was another part of the long campaign to end hiring discrimination. In 1944, Powell was elected the first black congressman from New York. Today, a statue of Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. stands in Harlem. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
It's Mueller time. Yes, Thursday, April 18th is here, the day that William Barr announced he will release the redacted Mueller report. Here's the day's schedule. Barr holds a press conference at 9:30 a.m. to discuss the report before the document is turned over to Congress. He's expected to address process questions and provide an overview of the special counsel's findings. The report is then supposed to be delivered on CDs to Capitol Hill between 11 a.m. and noon. At some point after that, the redacted report will be posted on the special counsel's website at justice.gov/SCO. After those plans were announced, the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, spoke to the press.
The Attorney General appears to be waging a media campaign on behalf of President Trump, the very subject of the investigation at the heart of the Mueller report. Rather than letting the facts of the report speak for themselves, the Attorney General has taken unprecedented steps to spin Mueller's nearly 2-year investigation. 1. He summarized the report and cherry-picked findings in his March 24th letter to Congress. 2. He withheld summaries written by the special counsel that were intended for public consumption. 3. He has briefed the White House on the report before providing Congress a copy, which has helped them prepare a rebuttal response for the president. And now, the evening before the report's scheduled release, the Department of Justice has informed the committee that it will receive a copy between 11 a.m. and noon, well after the Attorney General's 9:30 a.m. press conference. This is wrong. It is contrary to the Attorney General's own words to the committee. Quote, I do not believe it would be in the public's interest for me to attempt to summarize the full report or to release it in serial or piecemeal fashion. Close quote. It now appears the Attorney General intends to once again put his own spin on the investigative work completed by the special counsel and his team. The fact that the Attorney General is not releasing even the report to Congress until after his press conference will again result in the report being presented through his own words rather than through the words of Special Counsel Mueller. The central concern here is that the Attorney General Barr is not allowing the facts of the Mueller report to speak for themselves, but is trying to bake in the narrative about the report to the benefit of the White House. And of course, he's doing this just before the holiday weekend, so it's extraordinarily difficult for anybody to react. This is wrong. It is not the proper role of the Attorney General.
Following Nadler's comments, the chairs of 5 committees called on Barr to cancel his press conference. The New York Times on Wednesday reported that, as we had suspected, the White House was briefed on the report's contents in advance of its public release. Former Director of Public Affairs for the Department of Justice, Matthew Miller, explained on MSNBC how this goes against the cardinal rule of the Justice Department.
This report from the New York Times that the White House has been briefed by the Justice Department on what's in the report flies in the face of the cardinal rule about separation between the White House and the Justice Department. It is a cardinal rule that the
You didn't brief the Clinton campaign about the FBI's report back in 16? That didn't happen? You didn't brief the president about this?
Didn't brief the White House on that investigation. That is the cardinal rule. You do not brief the White House on criminal investigations before that information is public, let alone a criminal investigation into the president himself.
But he's been exonerated.
Yeah, sure. Of course he's been
exonerated. The Attorney General exonerated.
Even though the report says he's not exonerated. They aren't even pretending anymore to try to follow the rules. That's the thing that's so disturbing. They just don't even care.
In other news, North Korea announced that it had test-fired a new type of tactical guided weapon, its first such test since Kim's newfound friendship with Donald Trump. Oh, they also demanded that Washington remove Secretary of State Mike Pompeo from nuclear negotiations, accusing Pompeo of, quote, talking nonsense. The North Korean statement said Pompeo was, quote, misrepresenting the meaning of a requirement for the negotiations to be finalized by the year's end and referred to his, quote, talented skill of fabricating stories. It said Pompeo's continued participation in the negotiations would ensure that the talks become entangled, and called for a different counterpart who was, quote, more careful and mature in communicating with us. Alrighty then. We all owe former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe our gratitude as he announced Wednesday that he has decided against running for president. Instead, the former Virginia governor says he'll raise money and campaign for Democrats hoping to flip the Virginia General Assembly. This as his successor, Governor Ralph Northam, struggles in the aftermath of his blackface scandal. Fox so-called news spokesnews person Monica Crowley is reported to be Secretary Steven Mnuchin's pick to be his top communications aide at the Department of Treasury. Crowley is no stranger to controversy after she denied evidence that she plagiarized material for her doctoral dissertation and a book, calling the dust-up a political hit job. Coverage and details about those incidents reportedly blocked her path to prospective high-level West Wing appointments in 2017. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener-supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. Canada joined a new German and French-led alliance of multilateralism this week, the latest attempt by U.S. allies to build new coalitions to tackle issues like climate change and income inequality.
Alliance is a bit far-fetched.
David Carment is a fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute and says that while the alliance lacks a military component, there's still plenty to work on.
In particular, in the domain of global commons or global interests like climate change and also, obviously, free trade, where there's going to be some overlap and common interest amongst these so-called alliance members.
This is very much a typical middle power strategy.
Christopher Sands directs the Center for Canadian Studies at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced and International Studies.
Countries that aren't great powers often look for coalitions and platforms that they can use to be more influential in international organizations or as counterweights to great power politics.
President Trump has escalated great power confrontation, putting many countries in the difficult position of choosing whether to side with the U.S. in larger struggles against the likes of China. With Japan already an alliance member and Australia, India, and Mexico also thinking of joining on, there seems to be an appetite for avoiding that superpower slugfest. And as for a country like Canada that's long balanced relations with the U.S. against relations with the rest of the world, joining the alliance is at the very least a useful insurance policy in uncertain times.
With an election coming up in October, the Trudeau government wants to be able to balance a somewhat troubled relationship with the U.S. with at least ideas and engagement and maybe some new partnerships abroad to reassure Canadians that not only is the Trudeau government doing its best with Trump, it's also trying to find new allies and therefore give Canadians some options if the going gets rough.
Luke Vargas, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. We are expected a high of 85 degrees. We'll call it mid-80s. And winds are currently light and variable out of the southeast and will remain so all day. And we will have sunny conditions all day. And then later on this afternoon and tonight, the winds will shift out of the west and will increase at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then tomorrow, they will then shift out of the west, northwest, and remaining at 5 to 10 miles per hour, though our daytime temp will be about 10 degrees cooler, so in the mid-70s tomorrow, mid to upper 70s. And overnight lows in the low 50s. Grass pollen is rated at moderate. The air quality index locally is in the good range at 33 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is in the cautionary moderate range, though it has ticked down 1 from 6 to 5 today. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.06 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 87%, so still a bit humid. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Okay, that's my pea tape. Pop the peas or not to pop the peas? That is the question. London is 69 and fair. Paris is 74 and sunny. Rome is 70 degrees and fair. Kiev is 59 and fair. Kabul is 60 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 72 degrees with a rain shower. Tokyo is 61 and fair with a wind advisory. Sydney, Australia is 69 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco is 50 degrees and fair. And New York is 55 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy with a wind advisory of your own. So hold on to your top hats and have a good day. All right. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Ginger Gibson of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Stephen Miller, the White House aide driving a hardline immigration stance, was invited to testify to a House committee about the Trump administration's policy of separating migrant children from their parents at the border. Representative Elijah Cummings, chairman of the Democratic-led House of Representatives Oversight Committee, wrote in a letter that he would like Miller to explain why the administration decided to separate immigrant children from their parents at the border. He also called for explanation of transferring asylum seekers to sanctuary cities as a form of illegal retribution against your political adversaries, and firing top administration officials who refuse orders to violate the law. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment because they're kind of busy redacting the Mueller report and trying to fix their story. Miller has been a driving force behind Trump's immigration policies. A former Senate aide, Miller joined Trump's campaign early in the primary season and has helped shape much of the administration's domestic policy. Oh, a former Senate aide? Would that be for Jeff Sessions, that unreconstructed bigot? The committee's request stops short of demanding that Miller appear. The panel could exercise its power to subpoena him, although Miller could likely invoke executive privilege because his discussions with Trump may not be subject to compulsory testimony. Trump said earlier this month that he would not revive a zero-tolerance prosecution policy his administration previously implemented that required adults crossing the border illegally to be criminally prosecuted. Ginger, please. They're not crossing the border illegally. They are following the law. They have to cross the border to claim asylum. Trump says they're crossing illegally because it's a con. The only con is Donald Trump.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Steve Gorman of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Yale University scientists have succeeded in restoring basic cellular activity in pigs' brains hours after their deaths, in a finding that may one day lead to advances in treating human stroke and brain injuries. The scientists emphasized that their work did not even come close to reawakening consciousness in the disembodied pig brains. In fact, the experiment was specifically designed to avoid such an outcome, however improbable. Still, the study raises a host of bioethical issues, including questions about the very definition of brain death and potential consequences for protocols related to organ donation. The research grew out of efforts to enhance the study of brain development, disorders, and evolution. The main practical application is the prospect of allowing scientists to analyze whole brain specimens of large mammals in 3 dimensions rather than through studies confined to small tissue samples, Yale said. The study, backed by the National Institutes of Health, offers no immediate clinical breakthrough for humans. Results of the experiment, to be published on Thursday today in the journal Nature, run contrary to long-accepted principles of brain death, which hold that vital cellular activity ceases irreversibly seconds or minutes after oxygen and blood flow are cut off. You know, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, one of the practices when transitioning a loved one from this plane of existence to wherever is that you actually take hours speaking with your dead loved one as if they are still alive. Kind of makes you wonder if maybe science is now just catching up. The limited rejuvenation of circulatory function and cellular metabolism in pig brains, which were harvested from animals slaughtered at meatpacking plants. Yeah, you don't want to bring consciousness back from that. They might be pissed. And the last thing you need is a pissed Frankenstein porcine. Or porcine Frankenstein. I like that. Or is it porcine? Scientists stressed, however, that the treated brain still lacked any detectable signs of organized electrical activity associated with perception, awareness, or consciousness. Clinically defined, this is not a living brain, but it is a cellularly active brain. Co-author Zvonimir Veresela, associate researcher in neuroscience, said. The preservative included substances to block nerve signals. Now, this is a brain X preservative that they put these brains into. Researchers also are ready to halt any electrical activity that might have emerged through anesthetics and temperature reduction. While the study offers no immediate therapeutic benefits for humans, it does create a new research platform that may ultimately help doctors find ways to revive brain function in stroke patients or to test new treatments for restoring brain cells damaged by injury. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But we're going to be back tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays because we're going to be hitting those French 77s because of what's happened with Barr and all the rest. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll be back here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.